The LAFC soccer team recently held its second annual Pride Night. Several other SoCal teams will be hosting Pride Nights as well, including the Dodgers and the Galaxy. But as LA Times' LZ Grandison writes, not a single current athlete in the four major sports has come out as gay. So how much do these Pride Nights really mean? And LZ joins us now. LZ, I actually want to, before we get to that, make it personal. Reading your piece, you started off telling your own personal journey as a sports writer. And you said, hey, I won't use the term that you used in the piece, but that people were saying to you, hey, we won't let a gay man, we don't think a gay man will work in sports writing, right? You won't work well in these locker rooms. So that was, say, we'll call it 20 years ago. How have things changed for you personally and other sports writers as yourself?
Well, now I'm blessed that I can't stop working in sports, right?
I joke that you have 22 jobs.
That is the running joke. So things have changed a great deal, at least in terms of people being willing to see what you can do versus who you are. Though I will also say that who you are helps inform what you can do.
Right.
So I don't like to separate and pretend as if I don't see gender or color or sexual orientation. It's just those things shouldn't be barriers. They should be add-ons in terms of the texture of your sort of reporting that you're able to do.
And in this piece, you also talked about somebody who was a colleague for the both of us. I spent time at ESPN, and Steve Mason, another person who has been on radio for years, sports radio. And I remember working there, and he would be a bit nervous about coming out. And then I was there when he did, as you were. And it seemed as though the reception, and he talked about it in your piece, that it was actually pretty well received, him coming out, and that it was very little backlash. And so I want to take that to players. Do you feel as if a prominent athlete comes out, that they'll get the backlash that they think they will? Maybe it won't be as bad as they think, is what I'm thinking.
The great unknown is always the fearful part of any process when it comes to coming out. I remember thinking a lot of terrible things would happen to me when I came out. And I was fortunate I came out before I started my career. And so I dealt with much of those fears kind of privately before I had any level of notoriety, whatever you want to call it. But you're right. I tend to think that outside of the person's world, everything's going to be fine. What we don't know is what's going on in their own world. In other words, maybe they have a very close-knit family and they're afraid of rejection from their family members. So it's great, I'm on Ellen, but I can't go home for Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
So there's other reasons why someone doesn't come out simply besides it not necessarily being something they think the public would accept.
And we've had other players, Jason Collins, you and I were talking beforehand. We had so many other guys that have come out, and the women as well, who come out as gay. Why do you think we haven't had a prominent come out so far where, a star of a team, an all-star in a particular league? Is it simply because of it may affect my brand?
I mean, I would assume so. I mean, when you think about the reasons why people don't come out in everyday life, part of that is it may hurt their employment. And in certain parts of the country, that is very true. It's still illegal to fire someone for being LGBTQ. So when you think about that in terms of a larger conversation with athletes, Colin Kaepernick's not in the league. It's not because he's not a very good quarterback. It's because the forces that be said, no, not you today. So if they can do that to someone who was in a Super Bowl and who is still a very serviceable quarterback, then yeah, absolutely, there can be ways in which you can say, oh, well, we won't renew your contract because we kind of have a guy that fits what you do, but you'll be fine out there in the league. And then no one picks you up.
Do you think it matters the particular city or region that someone plays in? I'll give you an example. In your piece, you talked about the fact here, of course, the four major sports, and we have multiple teams in each sport here in LA. We're more, as you said, open to gay LGBT community. We're more open to that. And so would it work here, or maybe in the Bay Area, or maybe in a New York region, versus, say, a team in the South, a Tennessee Titans or maybe a Texas team? Do you think regionally or locally matters at all?
Not anymore. I think perhaps, if this was a conversation from the 90s, early 2000s, then for sure. But, just because you're an athlete in a particular city doesn't mean you have to stay there 24/7. There's an off season. You can live wherever the heck you want to. I really think it's more about the fear of the great unknown and the fear of employment. And even though we think as a society we've moved beyond a certain place, but right now, if you look on the political side, part of the conversation with Mayor Pete Buttigieg is whether or not the country's ready for an openly gay person to be mayor or be president. So certainly if you're say a team president and you're wondering, all right, will an openly gay quarterback be accepted by the team, by the community? Can we market this person the same way we would if that wasn't part of the conversation? We know they do the sort of math because the word what? Distraction gets used all the time.
All for everything.
For everything. So that's part of that calculus as well. So I'm not really sure if where the person plays is as much as a factor as it used to be.
You've been in many locker rooms covering sports, different leagues. Where do you think, what are the locker rooms environment like where do you think if someone was to be openly gay, and whether he's a star or not, he could be, I don't care if he's a 12th man on the bench, just the fact that he's current and he's playing right now, he or she, what do you think the locker room would be like just from the times that you've been there?
It's been my experience, and I'm not going to out anyone, but it's been my experience that there have been enough locker rooms around the 4 sports in which enough teammates know someone's gay, and it's just kept within a tight little circle. In fact, it's not even just my personal experience. John Amici wrote about that very thing with the Utah Jazz when he was playing, that there were guys who knew, but it was a tight little secret. So again, this isn't necessarily about the team, this is about the response to him, whether it is the public, whether it's potential advertisers and corporate sponsors, whether it's home life, and whether or not family is going to be embracing of that. But I didn't write the piece to force anybody out, and I want to make sure I stress that.
Okay.
Everyone has their own journey, but every major change in society is intentional. We're not going to eventually have someone come out and that'll be that. No, it has to be intentionally done. Just like you had to intentionally want to deal with racial oppression. You had to intentionally want to deal with misogyny in the workplace. You have to intentionally want this to happen. And these Pride Nights, if you will, help sets the tone for that intention.
All right, well, I'm sure we'll have, as we know, a couple of teams here. This is their first or second Pride Night. I'm sure they're going to continue for years to come. LZ, always a pleasure to have you. Appreciate it. The Angels are hosting their first Pride Night June 25th, and LZ will be a part of that event.